Welcome to Family History Mysteries, a podcast that tells the stories uncovered through family history research, the unexpected stories of everyday people. I am an avid family historian who has been compiling my family tree for over 15 years, with nearly 20,000 people recorded in my trees.
And please put a review on my podcast. That will certainly help in getting the word out there and creating more listenership. Episode 225, Alexandrina Askew, Part 2. So I'm continuing where we left off at the end of Part 1, where Alexandrina seems to have the net closing in on her. She seems to be having to attend quite a number of court cases in regards to her false representations. On the 24th of January 1868 in the Melbourne Argus, can it be Mrs Alexandrina Askew? We are informed, says the Ballarat Courier, that a Mr William Fraser's buggy was on its way up from Melbourne for his use in canvassing at the forthcoming Creswick election, and driven by a man named Stevenson. The latter was accosted by the keeper of the check gate near Bacchus Marsh, who said that a lady and a child desired a lift on the way. The request was granted when a short, stout woman with a baby in arms took her seat in the buggy and was driven to about Gordon's, where she alighted, saying she wished to go through the bush somewhere. She was very communicative, stating that she was on business, on a lawsuit, and her husband had disappointed her in not coming for her. She also stated she was a sister to Mr Grant, but her manner, though glib, was not such as to inspire much credence. And in the Bacchus Marsh Express on the 25th of January 1868, Alexandrina Askew was brought up, charged with obtaining £6 from Mr William MacDonald. The prisoner, who had a young child in her arms, was allowed to sit at a table with her counsel. William MacDonald deposed that he was a farmer residing at Parwin, Bacchus Marsh. He'd seen the prisoner for the first time on the 28th at his home, where she remained all night. He had some conversation with her. I was not in when she came, but when I came in, my wife said, "This is a Scotch lady who's come to visit us, and she has a parcel from a party in Scotland for a man named MacDonald at Bacchus Marsh." I said, "Indeed, I am glad to see her," and asked what part of the home country the party lived in that gave her the parcel. She said, "Golspie." "That's in Sutherlandshire," I said. "I doubt I'm not the man that the parcel is for, because I have no friends there when I left." She said, "It doesn't matter, I'll find him out." Then I asked her what part of Scotland she was from. She said Glenmorris. I said I had been often there in my young days, and she said that was her father's estate. "Indeed, a very good one it is." She commenced talking about her wealth. She stated that she was a married woman, an owner of a great station, Piggereat Station, that they had 30,000 sheep and 900 head of cattle and a great deal of money, and that she'd been storekeeping in Ballarat for many years. She said she was connected with the wealthiest squatters about Geelong. She was to present myself and my wife with a cartload of stuff. She was to send me a case of Scotch whisky, Mountain Dew, she said. She promised a cow too. She said herself and Mr Askew would come down in their carriage in about a month's time and stop a night with me and bring their eldest girl. After breakfast the next day, she was for going away and pulled out her purse and opened it. I couldn't see anything in it. She said that she forgot her purse the night before she left Melbourne. She said there were 3 cheques in it to the value of £70. She said her husband said, "Surely that will pay your expenses until you come home." She said, "I don't know what to do. I've got no money to bring me home." My wife said, "Perhaps William will give you some money." I paid. "You know that I have got no money in the house unless I go to the bank and get it, and besides, perhaps the lady doesn't want it from me." She said that Mrs James promised to give me money, but I would sooner have it from you than from her. I came up the marsh with her, drew £10 out of the bank and gave her £6. I went to Reverend Mr Scott and got his buggy for her and went to Johnston's, where I left her. On going up Stamford Hill, we met the stagecoach, and she said to the little girl with her, "Charlotte, is that your daddy?" If I had not thought she would pay the money, I would never have lent it. She said at Johnston's place, "You will have a cheque from me Monday or Tuesday." In fact, she said that if money could make a gentleman of a man, she would make me a gentleman. Before I went to the bank, I asked how much she wanted. She said £4 or £5, and I said, "Will £6 do?" And she said yes. She promised to send me a cow, and she has not done that. She has not sent Mountain Dew. She did not fix any time to fulfil these promises. I want my money back. I have no money to lose. She misrepresented everything. She promised to take my eldest daughter to her station, and she's not done that. She promised all of this because you gave her a night's lodging. And he said yes, and I'm very sorry that I did. I only took her to Mr. Johnson's because she was a Scotchwoman and represented herself to be the daughter of a nobleman. She talked Gaelic to me and I to her. Mr. MacDonald also added, the prisoner said she was going to take Mr. James's place as a dairy farm and that she would send her overseer down to see it, and then she would send the money down which she wanted me to lend her. She said this before I gave her the money. The defence said, I think it is useless carrying this case any further. These are all future promises, and the law, as your worships know, does not refer to them. And the bench said, we think the woman is clearly entitled to her discharge. The police can take other proceedings if they like. The motive which has actuated Mrs Askew in her extraordinary proceedings is somewhat obscure, as she still persists in her statement that her husband is a wealthy squatter, and she promises to refund money given to her. It is a pity the law cannot reach Mrs Askew in some way. So there's nothing heard of Alexandrina Askew for 6 years. And then in the Geelong Advertiser, in an unrelated case, it says, Alice Askew, wife of William Askew, farmer of Break of Day, deposed that she was a servant. So she's now changed her name to Alice. And on the 2nd of March 1878 in the Ballarat Star, a woman named Alice Askew was charged in Melbourne on Friday by Detective Beryl on a charge of having obtained from Rebecca Fisher, grocer of Sturt Street, goods to the value of £20, 2 shillings and 9 pence on false pretences. Askew, who represented herself to Mrs Fisher as the wife of Mr Askew of Smeaton Plains, was brought to Ballarat on Friday night and will be dealt with the City Court on Tuesday. The goods in the dispute were recovered intact. And in the Ballarat Courier on the same day, an arrest has just been made through the agency of the Ballarat Police, which is believed will bring a number of fraudulent actions to light. About a month or two ago, a number of tradesmen in this town were victimised by goods being obtained from under false pretences. On the 26th of January last, a grocer named Robert Fisher gave goods to the value of £20 and 16 shillings to a woman named Alice Askew, who represented herself to be the wife of a well-known resident of Soldiers Hill. This was not the case, as it afterwards turned out, and the woman Askew left for Melbourne last Tuesday. The goods in question were discovered at the Western Railway Station yesterday, consigned to Askew of Melbourne, and the police accordingly telegraphed Melbourne, the result of which was that the supposed offender was arrested by Detective Beryl and forwarded by the afternoon train to Ballarat. And a week later, on the 9th of March 1878 in the Ballarat Courier, the magistrates at the City Police Court yesterday were engaged for about 3 hours in a hearing of a number of charges preferred against a woman named Alice Askew of obtaining goods and money under false pretences. 3 charges were brought forward, but we understand that several others could have been substantiated. The gist of the evidence was that the prisoner, who has proved to be the wife of a fossicker named William Askew residing at Moonlight Gully near Illabrook, obtained groceries from R. Fisher to the value of £20, 14 shillings in silver from Mrs. M. Smith, residing at Black Hill, butcher's meat to the value of £1 from S. Windover. The last charge fell through, but the other 2, the prisoner was committed to take her trial at the next Court of Assizes, that it will be held on the 16th of May, bail being allowed in her husband's surety of £100 and 2 approved sureties of £50. Some merriment was caused in court by one witness stating that the prisoner told him that she'd come into Ballarat for the benefit of the water, and another that the prisoner had informed him she was the sister of Honorary J. Macpherson Grant, the present Minister of Justice. And a little more detail about the case in court. When Alice Askew was questioned about the £20, 2 shillings and 9 pence from the store of Rebecca Fisher, evidence went to show that the prisoner, when obtaining the goods, said that her husband was a farmer at Smeaton named Askew, who'd previously been a blacksmith on the Creswick Road, and who, she said, would pay the prosecutrix on demand. The prisoner gave the address of her pseudo-husband as Smeaton, but afterwards said that the blacksmith was not her husband, but a person named W. Askew at Camperdown, who was a doctor. Mrs. Fisher found that the prisoner and her daughter had left Ballarat and took out a warrant for her arrest. George Burgoyne, a grocer, deposed that the prisoner had told him that she was Askew, the blacksmith's wife, but Thomas Askew, the man referred to, swore that he'd never seen the prisoner before that morning. Senior Constable Corbett gave additional evidence to incriminate the prisoner, saying that she told him that she was the sister of the Honorary J. M. Grant, Minister of Lands. The prisoner did not deny the leading facts of the case, but stated that she had told the parties in it that the blacksmith was not her husband. When obtaining £1 from Marion Smith, She said the prisoner called at her house and told her she was the wife of a farmer residing at Smeaton. Constable Allen, stationed at Cape Clear, swore that the prisoner's husband was a miner and labourer named William Askew, living at Moonlight Gully. When she obtained £1 from S. Windover of Ballarat, she represented herself as the wife of one Askew at Scarsdale, which proved to be false. And on the 11th of March 1878, a letter to the editor of the Ballarat Courier. Sir, after reading the report of Alice Askew's case in today's Courier, I feel persuaded she is the same person who called at my shop on the evening of the 22nd of September. She was accompanied by a girl about 20 years old, and after selecting toys and a few articles of drapery, could only pay 5 shillings of the amount, 13 shillings and £4, stating she was a cattle dealer residing at Creswick and had come to sell cattle, but had been unable to do so and would call and pay the remainder on Monday after the banks opened. I have never heard or seen anything of her since. She further stated she was going to stay at a friend's house at the Reedon. She did not like to go without taking some toys to the children and gave her address as Mrs Cameron, Cattle Yard Hill, beyond Creswick. I should feel greatly obliged if Mrs Smith, whom she victimised the same day, would call at your office for my address. We could then compare notes as to her dress, etc. Although very inconvenient to leave my business, I would have gone to the court when I heard a swindler had been arrested to see if I could identify her, but understood she has not been seen in Ballarat until January. Now I have scarcely a doubt that she is the same person. In conclusion, I beg to say that it is hoped she will be dealt with severely, as it is dangerous for such an adept in cheating to be at large, and she is evidently bringing her daughter up to the same fraudulent practices. The girl is, if possible, more plausible than the woman, and seemed particularly anxious to allay any uneasiness in my mind as to being paid, and wished to have a valuable writing desk and some wool, assuring me of their perfect honesty. However, I declined, and I'm glad I escaped so lightly. Yours, victim, Ballarat, 9th of March 1878. In the Melbourne Argus on the 18th of May 1878, Alice Askew, who's been found guilty of 2 charges of false pretences, protested that she did not intend to commit any false pretence. His Honour said she seemed to belong to that class of persons known as professional beggars, who deserve very little consideration, and sentenced her to 6 months' imprisonment on the first charge and to 3 months' imprisonment on the second, to be cumulative. She is registered under the name of Alice Askew in her Victorian jail record. She stated that she was born in 1837 in Scotland, when she was in fact born in 1827, so she was 10 years older than she claimed, that she was a housekeeper at the time of her conviction, and she said that she'd come out on the ship the Rattlesnake in 1857. Alexandrina was free on the 11th of January 1879. The next we hear of the family is up in Echuca. In the Echuca Riverine Herald, it says that William Askew had been employed as a cook by McGrath, and he'd been in the employ of McGrath for 3 to 4 days. He was engaged in mending tents near the farm. And on the 3rd of June 1881, in the Ballarat Courier, false representations. An elderly woman named Alice Askew was brought up on remand from Echuca on a charge of having imposed on Susan Kirkland at Little Bendigo by verbal false representations with a view of obtaining money. The accused came to her place on the 5th of December 1879 and asked her to lend 10 shillings, at the same time stating that her name was Mrs Atfield, the wife of a farmer living at Blackball, and that she knew her husband very well. The accused told her she would pay the money back on the following Saturday, and the witness gave her 10 shillings. 2 witnesses swore that the accused's name was Alice Askew. Mr Gaunt contended that no case of false representation has been made out against the accused, as she merely borrowed the money. He also stated the accused told him that she posted a letter containing a half-sovereign to the prosecutrix, and the bench discharged her. On the 21st of September 1886, in the New South Wales Government Gazette, in the Supreme Court of New South Wales, an insolvent estate of Alice Askew of Riley Street, Sydney, boarding housekeeper. Her liabilities were £196, 4 shillings and 5 pence. Her assets, £45. She stated on the 21st of October that she had no property in Victoria. She said 5 years ago she had a drapery shop at Sandhurst, Victoria, but it was destroyed by fire, and she did not think she was entitled to any money from the insurance. And then nearly 10 years later, again in the bankruptcy court, Alice Askew of 285 Cleveland Street, Redfern, boarding housekeeper. Alice Askew stated that she was bankrupt 10 years ago. Her present bankruptcy was caused by costs being got against her in an action. William Askew died on the 27th of February 1902 at the age of 73. His death notice in the Australian Star stated that he died at his residence, 255 Cleveland Street, Redfern. William Askew, aged 73, later Victoria. Alexandrina died on the 7th of July 1913 at Wallara, New South Wales, of bronchitis and heart disease. Her death certificate stated that she was 77. She was in fact 86. Her death notices, the first one on the 8th of July 1913, at her late residence, Victoria Villa of Jersey Road, Wallara, Alexandrina Askew, relict of the late W.G. Askew and daughter of the late Dr. L. Grant of Inverness, Scotland, aged 77, and a memorial was placed in a year later, in loving memory of our dear mother, Alexandrina Askew, who departed this life on the 6th of July 1913, inserted by her loving son and daughter. William and Alexandrina's children. The firstborn was Harriet, who was born in 1853 in Victoria. She married Pasquale John Basomo in 1875 in Victoria. He was 10 years older than Harriet. Pasquale was an eccentric Swiss self-styled professor who dealt over the years variously in mesmerism, phrenology, homeopathy, and marriage guidance. He proved to be an interesting fellow, so interesting I gave him his own episode, bonus episode 41. Harriet died on the 25th of July 1931 at her residence at 37 Sutherland Street in Paddington. It says that she was the relict of the late Signor P. Basomo of Cleveland Street, Surrey Hills, and she was 77. They had 4 children: Guillermina Alexandrina Basomo in 1876 in Sandhurst, now known as Bendigo. Guillermina had a daughter, Victoria, who was born in Lithgow in 1900. However, this child died on the 12th of February 1900 in Redfern. Guillermina died in 1947 in Manly, and she did not marry. The second child, Alonzo James, was born in 1877 in Echuca. He was a printer and was living with his mother and his sister Guillermina in Paddington in 1930. He was a tram conductor, and he died in Lidcombe Hospital in Granville in 1936 at the age of 48. The third child, Pasquale Jr., Pasquale Arthur Basomo, was born in Echuca in 1879. He married Marie Louise Hart in Rockdale, New South Wales in October 1921, when he was 42 and Marie 31. They had 2 daughters, Margreta Louise, known as Greta, who was born in August 1922, and Lola Marie, born in June 1928. Pasquale was a carpenter and they lived at Arncliffe in New South Wales. On the 10th of June 1950 in the Yass Tribune Courier, says a collision occurred in Cooma Street on Saturday morning between a car owned by Mr. P.A. Basomo of Arncliffe, Sydney, driven by his daughter. The owner of the car was conveyed to the district hospital by ambulance, where he was treated for cuts to the head and was later allowed to leave. Pasquale died on the 2nd of June 1957, aged 77, in Grafton, New South Wales. The fourth child of Harriet and Pasquale's, Valentine William, was born on the 28th of February 1885 in Redfern, New South Wales. He married Iris Maud Gould in Sydney in 1908. Valentine was a printer. In December 1918, he was charged for drink driving and fined. In the Sydney Sun on the 29th of January 1926, 2 printers remanded, charged with forging certain betting tax duty stamps authorised by and used under the Stamp Duties Act of 1920, Valentine William Basomo, aged 40, and Henry John Roberts, aged 29, were at the Central Police Court today. They were remanded until the 12th of February with bail fixed at £100 each. The offence is alleged to have taken place between the 1st of April 1925 and yesterday. Sergeant Dennis stated that the defendants were both printers and that Roberts had purchased genuine betting tickets from the stamp office and sold them to his bookmaker clients for whom he did printing. Basomo was supplying Roberts with forged tickets, said the sergeant, and arranged with him to pass them off with the genuine tickets. Roberts was then to get a third of the profits, amounting to 8 shillings 4 pence a hundred. About 6,000 forged stamp tickets were discovered in their possession. And on the 16th of February in the Wagga Wagga Daily Express, at the Central Police Court today, Valentine Basomo, 40, and Henry Roberts, 29, printers, were charged with forging betting tax duty stamps. Roberts said to the detectives when questioned, "I am a mug, I am well in it. I know they are crook." Basomo said to Roberts, "Why are you putting me in the gun too?" Roberts replied, "It is because you are in it too. You are the man who brought all the forged tickets that were found at my place." They reserved their defence and were committed for trial. At the trial on the 30th of March 1926, it was outlined in the Bathurst National Advocate that the accused pleaded not guilty. The Crown prosecutor said that Basomo had been printing forged stamps for some time, and Roberts, who with his father conducted a printing business in the city, was contributing 300 genuine tickets to every 200 forged. On the 28th of January, a number of government printing men visited Roberts's printing office and examined a number of tickets found there. The paper in the tickets was found to be of different texture to that used in the government office. And as a result, Valentine Basomo was sentenced to 18 months jail and Roberts to 12 months jail. In October 1931, Valentine was charged with having an indecent publication in his possession and jailed for 1 month hard labour. He appealed and the case was dismissed. He doesn't feature for quite a long time until the 14th of July 1945. In the Wagga Wagga Daily Advertiser, it states that in Sydney, a total of £210 in fines was imposed on Valentine Basomo, 63, printer, for unauthorised printing of matter relating to racehorses when he appeared in the Central Court today. He printed a list of horses that were to run at the July Handicap at Randwick without the authority from the AIC. He was also fined for printing information concerning betting involving the July Handicap. So for the Randwick Handicap, he was fined £100 and another £100 for his involvement in the July Handicap. Valentine died in 1961 in Bondi at the age of 78. They had a son, Arthur William, in 1909. He worked as a clerk. On the 30th of January 1936, in the Sydney Referee, it says that he was an ex-New South Wales 110-yard champion and a Bondi all-rounder, and that he swam remarkably to smash the Bath 55 yards record, doing a lap of 28 seconds. And it also mentions his brother Vic, who entered into the backstroke. On the 25th of November 1936, in the Sydney Labour Daily, a leading light in championship swimming for many years, Arthur Basomo has decided to retire from competition. The Bondi Star is to join the ranks of the Benedicts. The bride-to-be is Miss Laurel Puckle of Bellevue Hill, who's been identified with the social activities of Bondi Surf Club for several years. However, 2 years after this happy announcement in the paper, on the 25th of April 1938 in the Cootamundra Herald, the well-known swimmer Arthur William Basomo, aged 29 of Bondi, collapsed and died while fishing at Gibbon Point at Port Hacking. Basomo complained of feeling ill, and his companions went away to make him a cup of tea. When they returned, they found him dead. It is understood that Basomo had suffered from internal trouble for some time. Arthur Basomo was a leading amateur swimmer and surfer. Colin Douglas and Bruce Wilson, also well-known swimmers and surfers, were with Mr. Basomo. They said that he lay down on a rock, covered with a blazer and sweater, and during their absence, only after a few minutes, he died. They made a stretcher with pieces of wood and bagging and carried the body 4 miles through sand, where they boarded a small boat and rowed to Cronulla. About 9 years ago, Mr. Basomo won the 100-yard swimming championship of New South Wales. He married a daughter of Mr. L.V. Puckle, managing director of the Emu and Prospect Metal Company, of which Mr. Basomo was secretary. During the last year or so, Mr. Basomo had not enjoyed good health. He suffered twice from pneumonia. Mr. Victor Basomo, a younger brother, is also a well-known swimmer and is honorary secretary of the Bondi Surf Life Saving Club. The funeral was attended by 100 members of the Bondi, North Bondi and other surf clubs and many business associates and friends. In his memory, the Bondi Life Saving Club presented a shield called the A.W. Basomo Memorial Trophy, the competition being a 6-man team race but between patrols held each season. Laurel did not remarry. The other son mentioned was Valentine Jr., known as Victor. Victor joined the Bondi Surf Club as a junior member in 1931 and went on to represent Australia in water polo and surfing. He held senior leadership roles across all levels of life-saving, serving Bondi as club secretary, and was awarded a life membership of Surf Life Saving Sydney, Surf Life Saving New South Wales and Surf Life Saving Australia. On the 23rd of December 1933 in the Sydney Labour Daily, it says, in a training swim at the Domain Baths last night, Vic Basomo of Bondi, state backstroke champion and record holder, swam 440 yards backstroke in 6 minutes and 10 seconds. His remarkable time knocked off the record and bettered the Australian record. On the 2nd of April 1935 in the Sydney Daily Telegraph, in an endeavour to raise funds to enable the well-known young swimmer Victor Basomo to follow medical advice and have a vacation in the country immediately, St Vincent's Hospital and Bondi Surf Club have combined forces and a dance has been organised. And Victor died on the 16th of April 1987. The second child of Alexandrina and William was William George. He was born in 1855. In 1909, in the Sydney Evening News, it outlines how William was a foreman at Bill's Brothers factory and that he'd been at the trade for 25 years. He died in 1923 in Sydney. The third child, Charlotte, was born in 1857 in Ballarat. Charlotte had a baby out of wedlock at the age of 16. Her name was Adelina Askew and she was born in 1875. Charlotte married Henry Bills in Victoria in 1880 and they lived at Greensborough where Henry was a manufacturer. In the Sydney Australian Star on the 24th of March 1893, alleged kleptomania. Captain Fisher dealt with a peculiar case at the North Sydney Police Court yesterday in which Charlotte Bills, 33, and Adelina Askew, 17, were charged with stealing a cake of soap, hairpins and other small articles. The case for the prosecution was that the two accused were in the prosecutor's shop on the 16th of March and that Mrs Bills was observed to appropriate a box of hairpins which the younger person put in a basket which she carried. The basket was searched and not only were the pins found but other articles. The women offered to pay double the value of the goods if the owner would keep the matter quiet. An assistant who attended to the customers deposed that she had been showing some clothing, including the articles mentioned in the charge, to the accused, and she left them for a short time to speak to another customer. It says the younger accused was completely under the control by the elder one. The accused, both of whom were well dressed. Henry Bills said that the elder prisoner was his wife and the younger his sister-in-law. They resided together at Mossman's Bay. Owing to his wife's poor health, she'd been treated by Dr. Rourke and other medical men. He was liberal with his wife, never stinting her in any way. She was allowed £5 a week, or £250 a year. Dr. Roberts stated that he'd operated upon Mrs Bills on 3 occasions. As to the possibility of the mind in cases of this kind becoming affected, it was not a matter of opinion but of medical authority. Kleptomania may be the result of a uterine affection. Captain Fisher remanded the accused to the Water Police Court on Monday in order to obtain the testimony of the government medical officer. On the second charge of stealing, the accused was remanded to the Water Police Court with bail being allowed. A couple of interesting things coming out of this article, that it seems that it's history repeating itself, that Alexandrina was pretty well stealing herself throughout her life and now her daughter and her daughter are doing the same. And the other thing that is notable is that Adelina was brought up by William and Alexandrina and that Charlotte's husband Henry obviously had no idea that Charlotte had actually had Adelina as a 16-year-old. States the medical evidence did not support the theory that Charlotte had kleptomania. Captain Fisher imposed a penalty of £10 with the option of 4 months upon Bills, while Askew was fined £2 with the alternative of 1 month's imprisonment. By 1922, Charlotte and Henry were living in Launceston, Tasmania, and by 1943 were living at St Leonard's, Tasmania. On the 20th of December 1922 in the Melbourne Argus, furniture factory burnt, Launceston. The furniture factory of Henry Bills and Company, situated on the eastern side of the Tamar River at Launceston, was burnt to the ground. The flames spread rapidly. The Launceston Fire Brigade was promptly on the scene, but within a few minutes the fire had reached quantities of stacked dry timber, and the brigade then restricted its efforts to saving a number of cottages adjoining the factory. The loss is estimated at £75,000, with 150 employees having been thrown out of employment. It will be 12 months before the firm is able to resume furniture-making operations. And on the 12th of January 1923 in the Launceston Daily Telegraph, Mr. and Mrs. Henry Bills arrive in Launceston yesterday, return from a tour. Mr. Henry Bills of the firm Bills and Company, furniture manufacturers, accompanied by Mrs. Bills, returned to Launceston yesterday after a holiday tour extending over 8 months. They did not intend coming back for another couple of months, but the unfortunate fire in their factory at Launceston hastened their return. Mr. Bills expressed keen appreciation of the many messages of sympathy received, and he deeply regretted the heavy loss sustained not only to the firm but the employees. He was indeed thankful that no lives had been lost and the horses had been saved. As to the future intentions of the firm, it was a matter of decision between the partners during the next few days. Referring to their trip, Mr Bills said that he and his wife left Launceston early in May last year. They put in about 6 weeks on the south coast of New South Wales and then went via New Zealand to Suva. About a month was spent at Honolulu, and it was indeed the happiest month they ever spent. Continuing their journey, they went to Vancouver for a week, Seattle for a week, and then to Portland, Oregon for a week. From there, they visited San Francisco, Yosemite Valley, and Southern California. They returned via Tahiti and Rarotonga to New Zealand and spent a month in the Hot Lakes district. They then went on to Hauraki Gulf, where they spent 2 months. Taking passage by the interstate liner, Ulamaroa, to Sydney, they came overland to Melbourne and they joined a boat for Launceston. Charlotte died on the 3rd of April 1945 at the age of 87. They had no children. Her obituary was in the Launceston Examiner. The death occurred at a private hospital at St Leonard's yesterday of Mrs Charlotte Bills, widow of Mr Henry Bills, who founded the firm Henry Bills and Company, who died several years ago. The 4th child of William and Alexandrina was James, who was born in 1859, and he must have died as an infant, as I cannot find any further information on him. The 5th child was Arthur, who was born in 1864 at Rokewood, Victoria. On his birth record, it stated that 5 children were alive and 2 deceased at the time of his birth. However, I can only account for 5 children at that time. In the Echuca Riverine Herald on the 6th of May 1880, it mentions Arthur, saying he was residing at Echuca and employed at McGrath's at Murphy Swamp near Turumbury. I couldn't find any further information about Arthur Askew. The 6th child was Alexandrina, born in 1866 in Pitfield, Victoria, and she died before 1913. And Marion, the 8th child of the family, was born in 1869 at Staffordshire Reef, Victoria. It stated on her birth certificate that 6 children were alive at the time of her birth, and Marion died in October 1914. A memoriam featured in the paper a year after her death. In loving memory of my dear sister Marion, who departed this life on the 15th of October 1914, inserted by her loving brother, W.G. Askew. So in 1913, on the death of Alexandrina, it says on her certificate that 1 female and 2 males were deceased at the time of her death. And if you're interested in some more detail about Alexandrina, Janet McCalman has a book called Vandemonians that covers Alexandrina's story as part of her book.
If you are interested in sharing your story on my podcast, Family History Mysteries, please go to my Facebook page and send me a message. If you would like some assistance in filling in the gaps in your family tree to see what mysteries you solve, please get in touch. And don't forget, you can have early access to episodes by subscribing, and you'll also gain access to bonus episodes.